The Vatican stands as the wealthiest religious institution on earth. Its cathedrals, archives, and art rival the treasuries of nations. Its bank discreetly stewards billions. Its reach extends from global markets to the most remote parishes. Yet the overlooked truth is this: such abundance was not bestowed by divine miracle. It was assembled, and like every enduring fortune in history, its base was formed not only by belief, but by strategy, authority, and transactions that would unsettle the devout. This is not a sermon. This is economics, because the rise of Vatican wealth is the account of how a persecuted faith evolved into a financial power, how money became the sustaining oxygen of religion. And the story starts the instant Christianity stepped into legality and reshaped power forever in modern world. In 313 AD, a decisive shift altered the fate of Christianity and the balance of power in Europe. Roman Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, ending persecution and granting legal status to a once-hunted faith. What followed was not merely tolerance, but transformation. A religion that had survived in shadows was suddenly embraced by the state. With recognition came reward. Wealthy Roman families transferred estates to the church. Imperial favor unlocked privileges, exemptions, and influence. Constantine financed monumental churches, embedding Christianity into the physical landscape of empire. The implication was unmistakable. Sanctity and wealth were no longer opposites. From that moment forward, the Church absorbed a lesson long mastered by empires. Authority requires resources, and resources secure authority. As centuries passed, this alignment hardened into system. During the early medieval era, the Church refined its first enduring revenue mechanism. Across Europe, believers were obligated to surrender 1/10 of their production to the clergy. Grain, livestock, and labor flowed steadily from villages into ecclesiastical hands. For peasants already living on the edge of survival, refusal was not an option. The penalty was not legal punishment, but eternal consequence. This was not voluntary charity. It was compulsory extraction, justified by doctrine. Over generations, the accumulated yield of these payments reshaped the continent's ownership structure. By the end of the first millennium, the Church controlled vast swaths of Western Europe. Fields, vineyards, mills, forests, and towns became ecclesiastical property. Long before modern finance, the Church had secured what mattered most: land that produced income endlessly. Yet land and tithes proved insufficient for an institution with expanding ambition. By the 11th century, a new instrument emerged, engineered with remarkable psychological precision: indulgences. The premise was deceptively simple. Monetary payment could shorten punishment after death, not only for the living, but for the departed. Fear became currency. Guilt became leverage. The Church monetized anxiety about the afterlife, converting belief into revenue. The proceeds were immense. Gold flowed toward Rome, underwriting cathedrals, bureaucracy, and conflict. BT stays. The Church no longer functioned solely as a spiritual authority. It had become a transnational power broker. This dual role reached its apex during the Crusades. Launched in 1096, they were framed as sacred missions. In practice, they were also vast financial operations. Armies demanded logistics, weapons, and pay. To fund them, the Church imposed new levies and expanded indulgence sales. Participation could be substituted with payment. Conquest delivered spoils. Cities fell. Treasures were seized, and territory shifted into papal influence. When the campaigns ended, Rome possessed not just theological authority, but military reach and financial weight, rivaling crowned rulers. The contradiction became impossible to ignore. While sermons exalted humility, the Church evolved into Europe's dominant landlord and collector. Families were warned against avarice, while watching wealth accumulate behind cathedral walls. The pattern was familiar. Moral instruction presented publicly, financial machinery operating quietly beneath it. By the late medieval period, the Vatican had progressed beyond land accumulation. It had become a finance. The Renaissance accelerated this. Popes transformed from shepherds into sultans. They governed territories, commanded armies, and competed with monarchs for prestige. These ambitions demanded capital. Churches required maintenance. Artists required patronage. Soldiers required pay. The ultimate symbol was St. Peter's Basilica. The aging structure inherited from Constantine no longer satisfied papal vision. A replacement was planned on an unprecedented scale. Its cost was enormous. To financit indulgence campaigns. Preachers crossed to Europe selling certificates promising relief from purgatory. The language was crude. The appeal direct. Coins dropped. Vaults filled. These funds did not merely erect stone. They financed lifestyles. Certain popes ruled as dynasts. Palaces overflowed with luxury. Feasts, art, and excess contrasted sharply with preached restraint, while the poor endured scarcity. Rome displayed splendor. Official doctrine condemned lending at interest, yet practice diverged. The papacy quietly aligned with banking dynasties, enabling wealth to circulate and multiply. Kings borrowed, bankers complied. Indulgences flowed upward. Rome became the nexus. But no system expands without resistance. In 1517, Martin Luther shattered the illusion. His challenge to indulgences struck at the Church's financial heart. Salvation, he argued, could not be purchased. Faith had been converted into commerce. Europe fractured. The very mechanism that financed magnificence ignited revolt. Wealth had delivered power. But also fury, and fury cannot be taxed. By the 17th century, the Vatican remained wealthy, but its supremacy was no longer absolute. The Reformation had permanently fractured Christian Europe. Entire kingdoms withdrew loyalty, redirecting wealth and authority away from Rome. Yet the institution endured by relying on a familiar formula. Doctrine above, finance below. Adaptation became survival. Even diminished, the Church retained immense property, revenue streams, and institutional memory. It understood something many powers forget. Money does not vanish. It changes form. For generations, land had been the backbone of Vatican wealth. That foundation finally cracked in the 19th century. In 1870, the unification of Italy dismantled the Papal States, seizing territories the Church had ruled for centuries. The Pope lost rents, armies, and political sovereignty. The Vatican shrank overnight from a territorial power to a confined enclave. Observers declared its decline inevitable. Without land, without armies, without taxation, the Church appeared financially crippled. But institutions built on accumulation rarely accept extinction. Resurrection arrived through diplomacy. In 1929, the Lateran Treaty rewrote the Vatican's fate. Benito Mussolini, seeking legitimacy for his fascist regime, struck a bargain with the papacy. The Church recognized the Italian state. In return, it received sovereignty over Vatican City and staggering compensation for lost lands. Hundreds of millions in cash and bonds. Adjusted for inflation, the sum equaled billions. What appeared as reconciliation functioned as a bailout. An empire stripped of territory was recapitalized in a single stroke. That windfall became seed capital for With it, the Vatican constructed a modern financial apparatus. The Institute for Religious Works, commonly called the Vatican Bank. Publicly, it existed to manage charitable funds and religious assets. Privately, it operated behind extraordinary secrecy. Free from conventional oversight, it moved money across borders, shielding transactions from scrutiny. During the Cold War, these channels served geopolitical ends, quietly funding anti-communist efforts aligned with Western interests. Secrecy. Bread scandal. In the 1980s, the Vatican Bank became entangled in the collapse of Banco Ambros. Billions disappeared. Roberto Calvi, its chairman, was found dead beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London. Bricks filled his pockets. His death was ruled murder. Investigations pointed toward a labyrinth of offshore accounts, criminal organizations, intelligence agencies, and ecclesiastical institutions. The Vatican denied responsibility, but suspicion endured. The aura of sanctity proved resistant to accountability. The contradiction hardened. An institution preaching humility had mastered modern finance. Wealth once drawn from soil and indulgence now flowed through treaties, banks, and investments. Legal insulation replaced theological justification. Art collections, real estate, and financial instruments formed layers of protection. Scandals erupted, yet consequences rarely followed. Sacred status functioned as armor, too old, too powerful, too symbolic to confront directly. In the present day, the Vatican's true wealth remains deliberately opaque. Its art cannot be sold, yet its value reaches into the billions. Its landholdings stretch across continents, obscured through intermediaries. Official budgets appear modest. History teaches caution. Power often disguises itself as restraint. Illusion becomes strategy. The pattern is unmistakable. Vatican wealth was It was accumulated through obligation, fear, alliance, and negotiation. It survived collapse by transforming structure. The lesson extends beyond religion. Systems endure not through virtue, but through control of resources and belief. Wherever faith is demanded, financial machinery follows. The surface changes. The mechanism remains. And here is the lesson. The Vatican's wealth did not descend from the heavens. It was designed, accumulated, and protected using the same instruments every lasting power has relied on: compulsory payments, territorial control, fear, political bargains, and financial systems. It expanded by monetizing belief, by extracting from the faithful, by aligning with emperors, kings, and strongmen, and by steering money flows exactly as modern states and corporations still do. This story is not about devotion. It is about infrastructure. It is about how power sustains itself. And that is why this story matters now. Because the Vatican is not an exception. Any institution that demands trust while quietly enriching itself follows the same blueprint, whether it is a government insisting its currency is stable while inflating it away, a corporation advertising ethics while squeezing labor, or a bank promising security while speculating with deposits. The pattern never changes. Faith above, finance below. So when you look at the marble corridors and gilded ceilings of the Vatican, do not see only religion. See the oldest rule of financial history. Wealth built out of sight survives by wearing the language of virtue. And remember, every time you are asked to believe without questioning, you should ask a single, uncomfortable question: who benefits from that belief? History does not warn gently. It punishes ignorance relentlessly. If this reframed how you see power, subscribe. History keeps receipts. Help you.